Hare Krishna, everyone. Okay, so welcome back. Now we are going to be covering chapter 6. Chapter 6 is called Dhyan Yoga, and the acronym for this chapter is easy. So before we start, let us say some prayers. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay, so just a quick recap of what's happening. So in the last three chapters, we had Krishna talking about Karma Yoga, okay? And in Arjuna says in 5.1 to Krishna that to tell him what is better, renouncing work or working in devotion. This is the confusion that Arjuna had. So Krishna, in replying to that, he said that both these paths are good. Now both these paths are good because it delivers the same destination, which is liberation, but of the two, working in devotion is better. Now, why does Krishna say that? He says that because for Arjuna, his qualification of working in devotion is better for him than for him to renounce work. Okay? That is why Krishna tells him that you should work in devotion. Now the rest of chapter 5 has focused on Krishna explaining the mechanics behind how working in devotion will help burn off all reactions. Okay? So what Krishna said, he showed the etiology. Etiology means the study of the link between cause and effect. So the effect is you get a reaction. But what caused you to get a reaction? He basically showed that understanding. So the root cause for a person getting entangled is the base desire for sense gratification. And this is because we get deluded by false ego, making us think that we are this body and thus making us think that I am the master and everything is mine to enjoy. Okay, we'll just see this in the next next slide. So what he says is here, we have the soul, we have the false ego, intelligence and mind, and you've got the body and then the outer world. Okay, so let us try and understand this. The soul is who we are. We are the spirit soul. Then we've got a subtle body made up of false ego, intelligence and mind. Right? Then we have the body, which is a gross body, which is where all our senses are. Right? And then finally we have the outside world. So up till here, it's all the body and inside. And this is outside the body. Okay? So the soul is who we really are. That's our real identity, and it is a root of consciousness. What is the difference between a dead body and a living body? It's the fact that there is consciousness in a living body, while there is no consciousness in a dead body. And so consciousness is a symptom of the soul, right? Now, the real identity is that I am a soul and that I am part and parcel of Krishna, and therefore I am his servant. Now, what the false ego does, it covers the real ego. What it says is that I am this body, and so I am the enjoyer and I am the master. Okay? So we said that the soul has got three characteristics. The soul has three characteristics. The first one is Sat, Chit and Ananda. Sat means eternal. Chit means cognizant, means it is alive and aware and full of knowledge. And Ananda means it is blissful. Okay? From these three, we get an understanding that I am. We have this understanding that I am. What is the difference between a chair and me? A chair will not be able to even understand or comprehend that I am a chair. But a living thing will be able to comprehend that I exist. I am something. Right? So this I am. And what is the thing that we always want? We want to search for happiness. So these two are our two things that we want. Now what false ego does is that instead of thinking that I am soul, it replaces this with the understanding that I am the body. So this is the framework that now the false ego brings in. And so because the false ego says that I am body, where does our search for happiness go towards? It goes towards satisfying the body. So all the things that we do, we are trying to search for happiness, but where are we searching for happiness? We are searching it in material elements and material things. Okay, because we are making, the false ego makes us, deludes us into thinking that I am the body instead of I am the soul. Okay, now when this happens, it is when we think that I am the body, we think that I am the enjoyer, okay, and then I am master. Yeah, and this is known as I and mine. This is who I am. This phone is mine. This thing is mine. My house is mine. The car is mine. Everything is mine. So that brings about a sense of me being the master and me being the enjoyer. Okay, and this fatal thing is called the base desire for sense gratification. So as long as we have this base desire of sense gratification, no matter whatever action we do, any action or any not doing any action, if it is based on a desire for sense gratification, then that will automatically lead to you getting a reaction. And this reaction and action chain keeps you entangled in the cycle of birth and death. Okay? So this is the thing. So the way to change this is that we need to change our base desire from sense gratification to sense purification. Yeah? And this only happens when we get to understand that I am not the body, but I am the soul. Okay? Okay, so this is basically a quick summary of what this whole etiology is about, of how we get reactions. Okay? So what happens is the sense objects are outside. Yeah, I like to eat a pizza. Pizza is a sense object. Then that object will tantalize my senses. It will tantalize, okay, I want to eat. Like the sense of the tongue wants to enjoy that pizza. So the senses will get tantalized. Then because you have had pizza in the past, you already know what type of sense enjoyment you will get from eating a pizza. So all the past impressions come rushing towards and say, okay, now you should, just by seeing the pizza, you'll go forward and say, okay, get it, it's a nice thing to have. If you don't like, say somebody gives you, what is it called, karela anushak, yeah, your mind will say, this is useless. So even somebody gives you karela anushak, you'll be like, no, I don't want to have this. Because the mind has already got impressions that this is not a thing that gives me enjoyment. Okay? So the mind is basically a storehouse of impressions. And these impressions are gained by previous interactions of the senses with the sense objects. Okay? Now, intelligence is supposed to control the mind. Yes? The intelligence is stronger than the mind. But what happens is, because the false ego deludes the intelligence by saying that you're not the soul, but you're the body. And then the mind says, okay, we're on the strength of this false ego saying that I'm the body, the mind is saying that I've got ways to enjoy this body. So intelligence has got no other framework. He's got no other framework because he doesn't know that he's a soul, right? So the intelligence will then bow down to the demands of the mind by saying that, okay, the mind wants me to enjoy these things. So now what the intelligence does, it makes plans. It makes plans on how to basically give pleasure to the mind. Okay? So this is the whole workings of our inner world. Okay. Now, to break free from this, to control the mind, there are two ways, and we discuss this as being two barriers. The first barrier is by strengthening our intelligence, by telling our intelligence with spiritual knowledge that we are not this body, but we are the soul. So it defeats the false ego part, and once it's defeated false ego, it can control the mind. And another way is to create some distance between the body and the sense objects. And the way we said it is, say there's an alcoholic person. An alcoholic person, he needs to go away from a bar. He needs to have some external disengagement to be able to control the mind. Now, if there was an alcoholic and you put a drink in front of him, his senses are so strong and his mind is so strong that even with intelligence, he will not be able to stop himself from taking that drink. So he needs to have some sort of external distance between the body and the senses and the sense objects, for him to be able to somewhat start the process of trying to control his mind. Now, from this whole thing, we understand that the mind is very, very strong. Okay, it's very, very strong. And to succeed in spiritual life, one needs to control their mind. Okay? So, after all of these things that Krishna shows in chapter 3, 4, 5 and all that, now Arjuna has got one question. He's thinking that, okay, Krishna, you have said that both these paths are good, working in devotion and also renouncing work. So if renouncing work is still a good option, and you've already told me not to do it through all of these things, but still I have some doubt that if this is still a valid option, because remember, Arjuna is in a society where there were many people who used to go to the forests and become mendicants and become yogis. So his question in his mind is, are these people also going on a valid path? Like, if you're telling me that this is easier and these people are going the harder way, why are they going the harder way? Why are they going the harder way? So Krishna says, yes, it is a valid path, and now in chapter 6, he will describe this more difficult path to Arjuna, and once Arjuna understands the mechanics of this more difficult path, he himself will say that, you know what, Krishna, you are right. What you had told me before, that working in devotion is easier for me and it is actually better for me than for me to think that I can renounce work and go and renounce myself from the world. Okay? So this is the whole of chapter 6. So in this chapter, the path of Ashtanga Yoga will be explained in its entirety. Now, Ashtanga. Ashta means 8, Anga means limbs. So Ashtanga Yoga is basically the 8-fold path. It's simply to establish the impracticality for the purpose of self-realization and spiritual perfection. Especially in this day and age. People who used to take this path, they used to go into the mountains, into the Himalayas, they would meditate in solitude and try and control their mind and do everything. But this was also in a place where there was no lot of temptations and not a lot of distractions. But in this day and age, we are so distracted, there's so many temptations. It's practically impossible for us to go to a mountain and just renounce everything. So Krishna shows to Arjuna that the path of Ashtanga Yoga is in fact not easy. Even though the acronym of this chapter is easy, the whole point of it is to show that this path of Ashtanga Yoga is not easy. Okay? So Arjuna himself then declares that the path as being impossible to follow, and so now Arjuna's mind is fixed. He is convinced properly now at the end of this chapter that I need to work in devotion, and then the chapter 7 to 12 is all about Bhakti Yoga, which is how to work in devotion. Okay? So Krishna then concludes this chapter by saying that the easiest and also the topmost path of self realization is Bhakti Yoga, and this will set up nicely for the next section of the Gita from chapter 7 to 12, which is exclusively on Bhakti. So, what does this acronym stand for? E stands for enemy of friend, and this is from text 1 of this chapter to text 9. A stands for Ashtanga Yoga from text 10 to 36. S stands for success and failure, which is from 37 to 45. And Y stands for yogi, which is from text 46 and 47. Okay? So, E, enemy or friend. So, what is this referring to here? This refers to the mind. Krishna says that the mind is of the utmost importance when it comes to progress in spiritual life. But what exactly is the mind? Let us understand that. So, as you already saw in the diagram, the mind is part of the subtle body, right? It's a subtle material element. Now, what the mind does, it is a root of consciousness. So, the soul, it is known as a root of consciousness, but the mind is this root of consciousness. Okay? So, consciousness actually comes from the soul, but if it comes from the soul, but it is directed via the mind to the outside world. Okay? That's how we interact. We interact with the outside world through our mind. Yeah? Just think about your secondary school biology. When there is an object, that object with the help of light goes through our eyes. But is it our eyes that see? No, it's that object is then imprinted into our mind, and then it's what our mind telling us what that object is. Is that yes or no? So it's a mind that is the root of the consciousness. Okay? So, and this is what people mistake it, is that people think that I am my mind. I am my mind. Because if my mind was not working, no matter how much external objects are there, I will not be able to relate. So actually, I am the mind. So there's a famous French mathematician and philosopher called René Descartes, and he used to say that I think, therefore I am. So he basically was saying that I'm the mind. Okay, but the actual understanding is like this phone. This phone is a hardware. Inside the phone, there's a software, and then there's me, the user of this phone. Okay? So the user of the phone is the soul, the software of the phone is the mind, and the hardware is the gross body, is the body. Okay? So the sole purpose of the mind is that it only wants enjoyment. Anything that gives it enjoyment, it will get attached to it. Anything that gives it displeasure, it is going to turn away from it. So this is known as raga and dvesha, attachment and repulsion. Okay? So what gives rise to the definition of pleasure in the mind? It is the storehouse of impressions and memories that already exist in it from past interactions. Okay? So the impressions of the mind which directly affect the department of thinking, feeling and willing. This is what the mind is. It makes us think, it makes us feel, and it makes us will. And according to this, it triggers us to do certain actions. Okay? Now, another way to understand the mind is an internet browser. Okay? Have you seen an internet browser? So in an internet browser, when you open it up, each person's internet browser will look a bit different, right? So the home page will have different icons, because that's how they have been using the internet browser. So if you just open up any of your phones, if you just look at open up internet browser, your configurations and another person's configurations will not be entirely the same, right? So the home page is like our default way of thinking, our default visions and our default principles in life. different principles. Then each internet browser also has a favorites bar, favorites. So these are the things that we hold to be valuable, worthy of our time, energy and attention. Our internet browser can also have a list of histories. Everyone's history will be different. Everyone has different memories, different impressions, different emotions, different events that they've encountered, different experiences that they have felt. And then finally, each internet browser has got an autocomplete section. So you just start saying www.b. Somebody just starts with www.b and ta 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 ta. You just write that much, and then there's a list of autocomplete options that come. Yeah? Some people will be like, oh, if they love Bollywood movies, just by starting B, it says Bollywood.com. If somebody is a spiritualist, he said BhagavadGita.com. Right? So everyone's autocomplete is different. But my question to you is, can we change the home page? Can we reconfigure the favorites? Can we readjust our history? Yes? And can we change our autocomplete as well? Yes. So, although we might have a certain internet browser setting right now, we can change it. Yeah, we can change it. So, for example, we are so used to going to the movies. So every time you say www.b, Bollywood.com will come. Which will be like, I don't want to go to Bollywood.com, I want to go to BhagavadGita.com. So then you'll have to type out B, H, A, G, blah, 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 blah. For you to be able to train your mind and your browser that you don't go to Bollywood.com, but you want to go to BhagavadGita.com. But you do it once, and the next time you put www.b, what will pop out? What will pop out?
Bhagavad Gita.
And Bollywood.
What will pop out? Bollywood. Why? Because how much frequency have you been visiting that site? And you've only visited BhagavadGita.com once, and here you've visited many times. So just one time does not change your conditioning. You need to have constant practice of going to BhagavadGita.com for the mind to learn that, okay, now I don't like to go there, I like to go here. Right? So, although you can do all of these things, the mind, like the internet browser, will always have pop-ups. Some things that might just take you away. But we cannot always help it. It's our conditionings. Another way to understand the mind through an acronym is MIND. So, M stands for magnifying. So what it does is the mind kind of distorts reality. Yeah, it makes like a mountain out of a molehill or an anthill, right? You felt that in your own lifetimes, that your mind will distort reality so much that it was such a small thing, but you've made it so big. Yeah, so it always, or it's like a binoculars. It will magnify the bad, but if you turn the binoculars and look at the other way, it will also minimize the good. So the mind does two things. It distorts reality by magnifying the bad and minimizing the good. I stands for it invents. It is very quick to make judgments about others. So there was this one story of a group of people who went to a Buddhist monastery, and over there, when they got there, there was an exercise they had to perform. That for 5 days you have to stay there, and the only condition is you're not allowed to speak. So you're interacting with people for 5 days, but you are not allowed to speak to them. Basically, you're observing Maunavrat. And at the end of the 5 days, there was everyone was brought back together, and they were told, now you have to basically interact with everyone. And then They asked, what is the lesson you learned from this exercise? They said that in those 5 days where we were silent and we were just interacting without speaking, our minds had already made a judgment and a picture of each and every single person. But not even 5 seconds into speaking with them did they realize that all their conceptions that they had created in the mind was completely false. They'd be like, oh, this guy he breathes funny, he walks funny, he must be like this, or he just looks funny, he has got a very weird stare and all that. So your mind just makes so many different sort of stories. It invents a lot of stories, a lot of conceptions, and most of the time it is completely false. It is way far from the reality of the situation. So this is what we have to be careful of. We have to be careful of the mind inventing stuff which is not exactly reality. It is distorted reality. Yeah? Now, N, so N stands for magnifying, I stands for inventing, N stands for it's being very negative. The mind always tells you what is going wrong. It is in an always constant state of being fearful. When you're happy, it will say, oh, this thing is not going to last, and you're going to be sad very soon. And when you're not happy, you'll be like, oh, you'll not even see the end of it. It will always remain this. How many of you have felt that way? How many of you felt that the mind is always negative? Yes? No? Yes. Yeah? Right. And D is it is distracting. Do you know that the average attention span of a human being is now only 7 seconds? It's even less than a goldfish. Imagine that. So, Kesha Maharaj used to say it very nicely. First, we were nowhere. Yeah, we were nowhere. Then we advanced and we reached somewhere. Then that we reached because of technology. Technology improved and now we are everywhere. Now that we are everywhere, we are constantly elsewhere. And because we are elsewhere, we are practically nowhere. So we started with nowhere and we're ending with being nowhere. So the mind keeps on distracting us. So like right now you're here in the class, but I'm sure your mind is already thinking, okay, now I have to go for Navratri. Then after Navratri, you'll be like, I have to go tomorrow, I have to go for school because there's exam. And then once you finish your exam, you'll be like, oh, I want to go for holiday. And then once you're going after holiday, you're like, oh my God, I have to go back to school. So your mind is constantly not at the present moment. It's always thinking and always being distracted by future or past events. You're either stuck in the past or you're always constantly thinking about the future. It's never there in the present moment. So the mind always distracts us from being in the present moment. Another thing is the mind is made up of thoughts. Now there are 4 types of thoughts, okay? So the 4 types of thoughts. The first one is negative. So you've got negative thoughts, you've got positive thoughts, then you have functional thoughts, and then you have wasteful thoughts. And I will just explain to you what these ones in. So negative thoughts are the ones that will create harm to oneself and others. These are thoughts which are based on vices like ego, anger, greed, and lust. Positive ones are the ones that create happiness to oneself and others. These are thoughts based on love, peace, happiness, and other virtues. Then we have wasteful thoughts. Wasteful thoughts are thoughts that are based on uncontrollable factors, like obsessively thinking about the past or the future and not on the present. And functional, these are thoughts on everyday necessary tasks and activities like bathing, eating, sleeping, all those things. Okay? So the key is that we want to focus on positive and functional ones, but we want to not focus on negative and wasteful ones. That is the right usage of the mind. Okay? So now, I just want you, all of you to close your eyes and imagine that you're in a room, a white room, or a black room, just a completely black room, and there are 4 corners. Okay? There's a room with 4 corners. This is where the 4 thought types are there. One side, on one corner, you have positive, another negative, another functional, and another wasteful. And now, close your eyes and think that there's a huge ball of light in the middle of the room. The corner that illumines the most is where your awareness is. So I want you to, for 30 seconds only, just close your eyes and just notice the thoughts that come into your mind for the next 30 seconds, and you tell me in which corner it is being put in. Okay? We start now. Okay. What was everyone's default thoughts going to? Which corner?
It's different for everybody, right?
Yeah, different for everyone. Just shout out your answers. Functional. What you're going to be doing next. Yeah. Then what else? Positive. What about negative? Anyone with negative thoughts? Or you guys are already.
Thinking about my wife. I don't know.
That's positive. Very positive.
Okay. So basically, we can do this exercise over and over again. That when you just take some time out and meditate and just observe your mind. What we are lacking to do now is that we just think that we are the mind, but actually we are not the mind. We are an observer of the mind. So this exercise helps us to detach ourselves from thinking that we are the mind to just being a silent observer. Right? We are not going to be associating with the thoughts. Thoughts will come and go. Yeah, but you stay. So this exercise helps us to realize, I want to understand where my mind is going. Yeah? And then we want to try and grab negative thoughts. It says, get rid of these. Let's focus more on positive and functional ones. Yeah? But more focus is on positive ones. Okay? Now, in the some of my teachers, they had likened the mind to be like a monkey. How many of you seen a monkey? How agitated is a monkey? Very. You cannot sit still. Now imagine if that monkey is now drunk. Now imagine that monkey is now drunk. Now imagine, can you predict what that monkey will do? And not only that, the monkey is drunk and has been bitten by a scorpion. That is how agitated our minds are. That is an example that has been used to even remotely come close to how unpredictable our mind is. Yeah? It's very hard to control it. Yeah? Now, we can control the mind. And Krishna says we can. He says it in this chapter only. He says that we can control the mind through spiritual practices. And in particular, the most potent spiritual practice is the one of mantra meditation. Okay? Now, if we look at in the sixth text of this chapter, that for him who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. But for one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain the greatest enemy. So the mind is an enemy when the senses control it, and the mind is a friend when the intelligence controls it. Okay? So, but intelligence only does not help. For example, we can be guided by what is good and what will help you achieve in this world. For example, our intellect knows that the world revolves around money. It knows money is very important. So that is why it forces you and forces the mind to concentrate. Go to school, get an education, go to university, get a degree. Even when you don't want to study, the intellect will basically beat the mind, says, no, this is good because by doing this, you are going to be equipped with sufficient knowledge so that you can apply yourself in the world, which will give you money, and that money will be the door for you to enjoy the world. So intellect even can control the mind in material activities. It's not that. But that of itself is not the end goal. Yeah, intelligence controlling the mind but only on the material level is still pointless. So you need spiritual intelligence, you need spiritual knowledge that can guide the mind, not only the material sphere but also on the spiritual sphere. Okay? So in the part of Ashtanga Yoga, controlling the mind is especially important. Now, why this is so? We need to understand what it is that controls the mind. What it is that controls the mind. There are two things that help to control the mind. Okay? The first thing is to control the mind, there are two things that can be done. One is individually try to do it, individual responsibility, and the other is social arrangement. Okay? What do I mean by that? So, imagine, right now in a classroom, just because we're in a classroom, we are in a gathering, a social gathering in a way. Our minds might want to go do some other things. They don't want to pay attention here. They don't want to pay attention here in this class. But because you are in a social gathering, you will control your mind by saying that, no, you pay attention here, you don't go and do your own stuff here. Don't act on your impulses. Or like if you're in a school and you go into a classroom, like you will sit quietly and listen even if your mind is dialing somewhere else or you feel like you want to do some mischief. Like when I was in school, I remember we used to make paper bullets and we used to have a rubber band and we used to, when the teacher's not looking, we would hit each other with our paper bullets. But even then, not all the time we would do that because it's in a classroom setting. Or even recently during COVID, all the kids were in the home, they were studying from home. And then in school, there's break time. Break time is at 10 o'clock and then there's at 12 o'clock, there's lunch. So you have dedicated times to eating, where your mind is let loose to do this stuff. But then what would happen at home is that even during class, there'll be some snack next to you to eat. Yeah? When you're alone and you're looking and you're engaging, your mind goes wild. But in a social arrangement like a classroom, your mind is a bit regulated. It's a bit controlled, right? Even in, say, if there's an assembly of thieves, the thieves will come together and they says, you know what, we will deceive the rest of the world, but at least between ourselves we need to have a bit of honesty. Now, even thieves themselves, if they get together, they will also have to regulate their habits if they want to stay together happily. So the more they say, the more sattvic the social circle, the more regulation of the mind. Okay. Now, what happens in Ashtanga Yoga is that people basically get out of society. They leave the world behind. So for them, there's only now one avenue left to control the mind, which is their own individual responsibility. They've forsaken society behind. So to control the mind with society is not an option anymore. So they can only do it through one method. Okay? So a very important example in this regard is in the Srimad Bhagavatam is given of Jad Bharat. Now Jad Bharat went to the forest to meditate and to achieve spiritual perfection. But he got attachment for a deer. And so because he was alone in the forest, there was no one to check him and his mind from developing attachments for material things. So that is why he had to take a birth in his next birth as a deer, just because he was already attached to a deer. But this is just a story in the Bhagavatam that is instructional. Okay? Now, we move on to the process of Ashtanga Yoga, just to make it more clear what this whole process is all about.
Very good.
Okay? Okay. So, Ashtanga Yoga. There are 8 stages, as I said, 8 limbs. The first stage is called Yama, and the other stage is called Niyama. Third is Asana, fourth is Pranayam, fifth is Pratyahar, sixth is Dharana, Dhyana and Samadhi. So let us understand all these points, okay? There are ways to do it. The common goal at the end is Samadhi. Okay? Samadhi. Now you start with Yama and Niyama. Okay? Now Yama means the don'ts and these are the do's. So if I tell you that I want to become the greatest footballer, what are the do's and don'ts I need to follow? So do's are I need to practice, I need to live a good lifestyle. But to live a good lifestyle, I need to say don't to eating junk food. I need to say do to going to the gym. So although some things, even the goal is the same, to become a elite footballer, there are a bunch of do's and don'ts that I need to follow that get me to the goal. So this is what Yama and Niyama do. Now, next is Asana. Asana are different postures of the body to control the body and the senses. Okay? Just like if you're in cricket. In cricket, each batsman has a different stance of before the ball is bowled. Every batsman is different, but the goal is what? That each batsman is in a different position, but that position is best for him so that he is ready, is optimally ready to face the ball, right? So the different batting stances are like the different asanas. Then we have pranayam. Now pranayama is basically controlling our breath. So breath work, all these things, yam, niyam and asana, these are on the bodily level. What links the body to the mind? The thing that links the body to the mind is the breath. Yeah, if you are tensed, notice your breath will become very short and very fast. But when you're relaxed, your breath will be deeper and longer and cooler. So the first thing when somebody says to calm down is what do they say? Take deeper breaths. Because breath is intimately linked with controlling the mind. So pranayam is what the yogis practice to control the mind. Now these 4 things are practiced while staying in the world. Yeah, you don't need to renounce the world to be able to do this, right? So this asana is also known as what Westerners know as yoga or hatha yoga. This is hatha yoga. This part here is called hatha yoga and pranayam. These two things together. This is what the world understands what yoga is. But what is the point of doing this is that eventually you get to the point of samadhi. You have already fully absorbed your mind and your existence in God. Not that you do it for a physical benefit or material benefit. No, that is not the end goal. It will help, but it is not the end goal. Okay? Then we have the stage of pratyahara. Now pratyahara, ahar means food, and pratya means to starve. So each sense has its own food. Eyes want to see something beautiful. The ears want to listen to something pleasing. Yeah? The nose wants to smell something fragrant. So each sense has its own ahara, food. But what we are trying to do is we are trying to do pratya. Pratya means to starve. We are starving our senses from engaging with the outside world. We are trying to focus inwards. We are trying to focus all our energy inside, in our internal space. Yeah? And then what happens is, then a person starts to fix the form of the Lord. They try to look inside of what is the ultimate reality. They try to look for God within themselves, right? So then they get to understand that, okay, there is the soul and the super soul, and then they fix the super soul in their mind. And then dharana, dhyan and samadhi, these are intensifying versions of meditation. Okay? So now the whole journey of Ashtanga Yoga, Krishna explains it 3 times. Between text 10 to 15, he will describe the journey from the physical to the internal. From 16 to 23, he will describe the experience of the journey. And from 24 to 32, in 32, he describes the vision in the journey. Okay? So, in 10 to 15, what Krishna says is that it's very difficult for most people to make sudden internal changes, even though what's most important is an internal change. But people cannot make sudden, just like an alcoholic. He knows that drinking is bad, but he cannot all of a sudden make that change. He needs to make external changes first before he can make internal changes. Yeah. So Krishna recommends that if you want to control the mind, first you need to make an external change. You need to disassociate the mind from the world, or you need to sit in a secluded place and carefully control the mind by focusing on Vishnu and Krishna in the heart. So this is what Krishna says in the first 5 verses of this section. Then from 16 to 23, he tells Arjuna what is the experience of that journey. What will you experience when you reach the stage of samadhi? Yeah? If I tell you, okay, you go to the Himalayas, what was your experience and what is your vision? Yeah, your experience is, okay, school, it's like this, like that. But then what is your vision? Oh, I saw this and then I saw this. So experience and visions are 2 different things. Okay? Now, in experience, Krishna starts by giving more details on how to achieve internal changes by regulating our external dealings such as eating, sleeping, recreation and work. Yeah? Then Krishna gives an example of what is the nature of a controlled mind. It's like a lamp in a windless place. Yeah? How steady the lamp is without wind. That is how steady our mind has to be. He gives an analogy or an example of what is the level we need to get to. And then he says, what is the experience? The experience is that this person is situated in boundless transcendental happiness, and upon gaining this, he thinks there is no greater gain, and thus he never departs from the truth, therefore never shaken in the midst of greatest difficulty. So the most important part is, upon achieving this gain, he thinks there is no greater gain. So this is the difference between an external achievement and an internal achievement. When you have an external achievement, before you get that achievement or just after you get this achievement, you will not feel satisfied. You will always have more cravings. And after getting that achievement, then you are fearful that what if it goes away? Yeah? What if it goes away? So you work so hard, and then you get money. So that money, the more the better, the more the craving. The more you have, the craving for getting more is higher. And then because you have it, then you already you're lament or you're worrying that what happens if all of this goes away. So an external achievement, it gives you neither satisfaction nor does it give you peace. But an internal achievement, it gives you both. When you get internal achievement, your craving stops. And because you'll be like, okay, I don't want anymore, I've got the highest. I've already got the highest, there's nothing higher to get now. And the fact with the internal achievement is that no one can take it away from me. So there's no fear of it being lost. So that is why internal achievement is higher than external achievement. And that is why Krishna says that upon getting this gain, the person will feel that there is no greater gain to be made. Okay? Okay. Now, from 24 to 32 is a vision of the journey. At the end of the journey, the yogi, he will see the super soul within. Now, this super soul is in the form of Lord Vishnu with the 4 hands and holding the 4 items: Chakra, Gada, Padma and Shankh. Yeah? Now, what happens in this scenario is that he will realize that the soul is of the same quality as the super soul. Not quantity, quality. It is spiritual. Same as the super soul, which is spiritual. So when this yogi understands this qualitatively identicalness, then he sees everything connected to the super soul. He sees that not only me, but all the living entities, they are also all souls, and they all also have a connection with the super soul. Okay? So then what happens is that person's equal vision rises to such a level that he sees everything and everyone as connected to Krishna, and Krishna as connected to everyone. So he sees there is no difference. For him, it says in the Gita that for such a yogi, I am never lost to that person, nor is he ever lost to me, because of this equal vision. And then finally what happens is this yogi, once he sees the super soul and sees that qualitatively we are the same but quantitatively we are not, so then it brings about a mood of worshipping and a mood of rendering service. And so then this yogi renders service to the super soul, and that progresses to the level of being a bhakti yogi. Okay? So the whole point of this is that a yogi should get to the level of having equal vision. Yeah, he sees every living entity as being connected to the super soul and being the same as him. And so this is what scares Arjuna. He is like, how am I ever going to be able to see my brother Duryodhan, elder brother Duryodhan, who is like the epitome of religiosity, and Duryodhan, who is the epitome of or the personality of irreligion, to be on the same level? I cannot do that. My mind will not be able to accept that. But this is what Krishna says, that a person who wants to go on this path of Ashtanga Yoga has to develop his mind to such a level that he sees everything in an equal vision. And then Arjuna says that I cannot do that. And so that is why when Arjuna basically tells Krishna that this path is not for me. Okay? And then Krishna says, Arjuna says this is impossible. But Krishna says, yeah, it's possible. It's possible with spiritual practice and detachment, but he doesn't go much into it because his main objective has been accomplished, to make Arjuna understand that this path is not for him. Yeah. Then Arjuna raises a point. He raises a point saying that, okay, say a person goes on this path, and what happens if he expires before he has reached the end of this path, right? Then this person has started the path of yoga and he's left the world behind. He's left the world behind and he wants to go on a spiritual journey. But what if he doesn't reach perfection and he expires before that time? He says, what happens to that person? And the example that Arjuna gives is like a riven cloud. Say a big bunch of clouds which is full of rain, and a bit of it gets separated, and so this one will fall as rain, but this one will just be floating in the air, and then it will just disappear like a riven cloud, he says. So what happens to such a person? And he's being very pragmatic here. So Krishna then tells him that anyone who takes on a genuine yoga path, for that person there is no loss of progress. And this is one of the most encouraging shlokas in the entire Gita. He tells Arjuna that no matter whatever progress you have done, that progress will always remain. So in essence, what huh? So what Arjuna is trying to say here is that, say this is the world. I'm sorry. So this is the world. There's a person here, and we are on the earthly plane. And then here is a heavenly plane. I think we are. Okay, so say there's a person that is over here. Yeah? So the normal journey that people take is they do activities here to come here to enjoy the heavenly planets. This is known as the path of karma kanda, and this is in the material world. Beyond the material world is the spiritual world, and any yoga process takes one from the material world to the spiritual world, and this is known as liberation. Okay, so what happens is a person, he decides that he wants to give up the world and the normal way of doing good actions. Then you go to heaven, you enjoy, and then you come back and all that. He wants to go into the path of yoga, which takes him to the spiritual world. But what happens if he doesn't reach here? What happens if he expires here? Or what happens if he expires here? Right? There are two scenarios. Okay? The first scenario is this person, he passed away, but he is not yet very steady in his yoga practice. He's only made this much progress. So what Krishna says, what happens to this person is that this person goes to heaven and he enjoys there for a long time before he comes down again to earth, and now he gets birth in a completely rich and well-to-do family, or he gets in a very pious family. he gets birth in a very pious family. Okay? And then from here he can resume his journey back to the he can resume his yoga journey, but he will resume from this point here. Yeah, there is no loss. There is no loss. A person who comes here who is progressed quite a bit, but not yet 100%, what happens to this person is that on the earthly plane, he gets birth in a family of highly transcendental people. So, from birth only, he will get the chance and the environment to quickly progress from here to here and to achieve perfection in that one lifetime itself. Okay? So, he says that there is no loss. Now, the reason why there is no loss as well is because the person who has started his journey on a yoga process, he started to put spiritual impressions in his mind. And as we said already early in the course, that what happens is that there's a soul, there's a subtle body, and then there's a gross body. What happens at death is that this gross body goes away, and then the subtle body along with the soul goes into a new gross body. Okay? So where are the impressions stored? They're stored in the mind. Where is the mind? Subtle body. So the subtle body is the same. It carries the impressions that were in this gross body to a new gross body. So because the impressions are carried, there is no loss. So that is why you see some people when they are born, some people have a natural attraction to principles of religion, and some people are not at all into it. Some people are just need a bit of as I say, like a small spark for it to burst out, right? And so this is known as the carrying swabhava, the carrying impressions from the last life, spiritual impressions from the last life. And so that is why there is no loss, because all the savings are done in the mind, not in the body. The body will go away, but the mind remains. The mind remains throughout all our lifetimes in different bodies. Okay? So, this is what Krishna says, that our spiritual impressions remain. Again, back to the story of Jad Bharat. He got attached to a deer. Yes, so he became a deer in the next life. But then after that life, he recalled that this is what I had done wrong. This is my step that I had done wrong. And that is why then he was known as, third birth was known as Jad Bharat. And he was completely focused on not getting deviated and staying on that path so that he could complete his process. Okay? And then, so that is why when we look at success and failure, the one thing that we, even in material circles, what we look at success and what we look at failure is to understand, or in any investment, we look at the rate of return. If this investment is giving me X amount of return, or this investment is giving me Y% of return, if Y% is greater than X%, you should go for the investment which gives you Y% return, isn't it? So, investing in spirituality and in Krishna consciousness is actually the best investment one can make in their life. And let me tell you why. So, we look at the return. The return is infinite. With spirituality, we are in a material body. And as we said, a material body is perishable. Yeah? Or we said early in the class, the soul is Satchit Ananda. It is eternal, it is cognizant, and it is blissful. But it is trapped in a material body. This material body is perishable. It is not going to last forever. Yeah? It is dead matter. it is worth nothing. If I cut off my hand, this hand will stay here and rot. It's not going to just get up and go somewhere else. It doesn't have that ability. And it is a place that gives us constant suffering. Imagine how much pain our body gives us and how much pleasure it gives us. The proportions are massive. Yeah? You like to eat pizzas and gulab jamuns, you eat too much, the next day you've got constipation. And that is a state of suffering. Right? So the return is infinite. We go from a material body to a spiritual body. Okay? And we escape the four fundamental problems of life. BODY, birth, old age, disease, and Yamraj, meaning death. Yeah? That is what we escape. And then the risks. The risks are basically zero, because Krishna says there is no loss on this path. Then also the other benefits, like it doesn't matter when you start. Even a Jamil, he started it on the deathbed. Like when he was about to die, he cried out and he became fully spiritualized consciousness. Even 7 days before death, Parikshit Maharaj, he got purified. Even at the time of death, Kartanga Maharaj. The Bhagavatam is replete with examples of people who achieve spiritual perfection in a moment. Right? Then there is simplicity in performing it. That you think that, you must have knowledge, you must have a lot of know-how, and you must have a lot of equipment for you to be able to make the best investments. But investing in bhakti is very simple. Is Krishna says in the 9th chapter, 26th verse, just give me a leaf, water, flower, or leaf, or fruit. Just these four things you offer to me, but condition is with love and devotion. Then that is enough. You don't need any more. Then it's universal. Anyone can begin. It's not that this thing requires you to have so much education. No, you can learn it when you are a small baby, like Dhruva Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, or in the youth, or in the old age, like Dhritarashtra. In the end of his life, he became spiritualized, and even at death, like a Jamil. And finally, yogi. Why? So Krishna will reaffirm that the perfection and goal of all yoga systems is to help the individual to become fully conscious of God, and then the most advanced, efficient, and at the same time easiest path is known as Bhakti Yoga. Now, if we look at that level of that Ashtanga Yoga, the last part is Samadhi. Samadhi means what? Sama means complete, and Dhi means to absorb yourself. So the stage of Samadhi is the perfection for a Ashtanga Yogi. But that is already the stage that is there by a Bhakti Yogi. All his activities, all his mind is always surrounding where? It is always revolving around where? It's always revolving around God. All his thoughts, all his actions, every single thing is centered around God. So he's already a living example of a person in Samadhi, if you think about it. And so this is what Krishna will bring out, that a Bhakti Yogi is already at the level of Samadhi. And now the primary practice of Bhakti Yoga is mantra meditation, which is the chanting of the names of God. And you all know what the Maha Mantra is? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay, thank you everyone. Any questions now? Yes?
I had a question. In case of this Ajmera,
Mm-hmm.
in his previous work, he must have done some devotional service.
Yes.
Which is like in that birth, he did so many sins. But
Yes.
it is that he managed to pass through.
Yes.
It was because that he was in number stage 2. That's
Possibly,
last
but
minute, he managed to go through.
yeah, of course. Not anyone who is even spiritually inclined, just a bit, has performed mountains and mountains of worth of pious credits in the previous lives. Only then do they get the opportunity to even hear and discuss and to appreciate spiritual knowledge. Yeah? So even though in this lifetime you might think like, oh, what have I done to come to spirituality? Actually, you've done a lot, but you don't remember it. You don't remember it. Yeah? It's just like this small moment, there's a small chingari that happens and it just bursts into a flame. Okay? Any other questions? Otherwise, thank you everyone. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Bhagavad Gita ki jai.